You think it's just bad luck. You keep attracting people who charm you, praise you, mirror your soul, only to slowly manipulate, confuse, and discard you again and again. And maybe part of you is starting to wonder, why does this keep happening to me? Here's a hard truth. Narcissists don't choose randomly. They're drawn to something in you, something unhealed. It's not your kindness, not your empathy, not your intelligence. It's your wound. There's a part of you, hidden even from yourself, that still believes you have to earn love, that you must give more, explain yourself, be good enough to stay worthy in someone's eyes. And narcissists? They sense that energy like predators in the wild. They look for people with shaky boundaries, overdeveloped guilt, and a silent fear of abandonment. Not because you're weak, but because you were once wounded. But here's the part no one tells you. When you finally heal this part of yourself, they stop showing up. They don't know how to manipulate someone who no longer needs to be chosen. So the question isn't, how do I stop attracting narcissists? It's deeper. What am I still trying to prove through relationships? Because once you heal that, everything changes.
Let's talk about the beginning, because it never starts with pain. It starts with magic. Narcissists don't walk in screaming red flags. They walk in mirroring your deepest desires. They make you feel finally seen, as if someone actually understands your soul without you needing to explain it. And that's where the trap is, because what they're really reflecting is not your soul, but your longing to be accepted. They watch your body language. They listen carefully for what you crave, not to love you, but to become what you need for a while. So of course it feels amazing at first, especially if you've been invisible for most of your life. Especially if you were raised in an environment where love had to be earned through performance, people-pleasing, or perfectionism. To a narcissist, this wound is golden. They know you'll hold on when things get confusing. You'll try harder when they withdraw. You'll blame yourself when things go wrong. And that's exactly what keeps the cycle going. But here's the shift. When you finally feel seen by yourself, you stop being impressed by someone who gets you quickly. You start looking beyond the flattery. You trust the slow burn, not the fast spark. Because you've learned real connection doesn't rush, and real love doesn't mirror you, it meets you.
You weren't born believing love was conditional. You learned it. Somewhere along the line, maybe as a child, you realized that your worth depended on how well you behaved, how quiet you were, how much you gave. You learned to scan faces for approval, to apologize quickly, to make yourself small to keep the peace. And the scariest part? You thought this was normal. So now when someone shows affection only to take it away, when someone makes you feel like you're the problem, when someone twists your kindness into a weakness, it feels familiar. That's how emotional wounds work. They create a pattern, and until it's healed, your nervous system seeks out what it recognizes, not what's healthy. But here's the truth. You were never too much. You were just around people who gave you too little. And now you don't have to repeat that script. The moment you realize that your value doesn't increase when you're useful is the moment narcissists lose their power over you. You stop trying to prove yourself. You stop giving out of guilt. You stop needing validation from people who are only there to take. And if this is hitting something inside you,
if a part of you finally feels understood, this space is for you. Subscribe to Slow Psychology, because healing begins with awareness, and we go deep here.
Healing doesn't look like a dramatic confrontation. It's not about calling out the narcissist. It's not about revenge or proving anything. Healing is quiet, subtle, but powerful beyond measure. It's when someone tries to bait you into defending yourself and you simply don't take the bait. It's when someone withdraws their affection and you no longer panic or chase. It's when the same manipulation pattern reappears, but this time you see it clearly and walk away. No explosion, no drama, just clarity. That's when the game ends. Because narcissists feed off emotional chaos, your guilt, your confusion, your fear of being disliked. But when you're rooted in self-worth, when your nervous system is calm and your love is no longer for sale, there's nothing for them to latch onto. Your silence becomes resistance. Your detachment becomes protection. And your peace becomes your boundary. It doesn't mean you're cold. It means you finally understand. Your energy is sacred, and not everyone gets access to it. That's the kind of transformation they don't expect, because they were counting on the old you, the one still bleeding. But healing makes you unrecognizable to your past.
At first, they won't believe it. They'll sense something's different, but they'll assume it's temporary. They'll test you. They'll press the same old buttons: guilt, flattery, fake apologies, silent treatment, rage masked as concern. But this time, you don't respond the same way, because you're no longer reacting from fear. You're not fighting to be understood. You're not trying to earn love through emotional labor. You've stepped outside the loop. And when a narcissist feels that shift, truly feels it, they panic. Not because they miss you, but because their control is slipping. They'll try to re-enter in 1,000 subtle ways, through nostalgia, through kindness, through chaos. But here's what you now understand. You don't owe access to anyone who confuses love with power. You don't owe a second chance to someone who weaponized your empathy. You're allowed to protect your energy, even if it disappoints others. And here's the most important part. Don't try to heal them. You are not the antidote to someone else's shadow. You are your own light, and your peace is not up for negotiation.
When you heal the part of you that believed love was something to earn, you start attracting people who love without conditions. You stop craving intensity. You start craving safety. You stop chasing validation. You start honoring alignment. You're no longer impressed by charisma. You look for emotional consistency. Someone who doesn't confuse your nervous system. That's how your inner world begins to shift your outer one. Because people who used to excite you now exhaust you. The highs and lows no longer feel like passion, they feel like danger. And when someone new enters your life, you don't just ask, "Do I like them?" You ask, "Do I like who I become around them?" Because now you know real connection feels like clarity, not confusion. It's calm, not chaotic. It expands your voice, not shrinks it. And here's what might surprise you. When you finally stop tolerating crumbs, the silence at first feels empty.
You might even miss the roller coaster. That's not weakness, it's withdrawal. You were addicted to the rush of being almost loved. But hold on, because what's coming next is peace. And peace feels foreign at first, but once you taste it, you never go back.
If you've ever asked yourself, why do I always attract broken people? There's something deeper going on. You don't attract them because you're naive. You don't attract them because you're weak. You attract them because you were taught to survive by fixing others. You learned to keep peace by becoming useful, to earn love by being understanding, to avoid conflict by staying silent. And somewhere along the way, your self-worth got entangled with being needed. So when someone walks into your life with chaos, wounds, and emotional emptiness, your instincts kick in. You try to help. You try to rescue. You think, if I can just love them enough, they'll change. But here's the painful truth. You're not in love with them. You're in love with who they could be. And that keeps you stuck in fantasy. It's not your job to fix someone who's committed to their dysfunction. You don't need to become their therapist, their emotional parent, their mirror, or their savior. Because you finally realize helping is not the same as healing. And loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself. The moment you release the role of the rescuer, you create space for relationships based on truth, not trauma. And you stop attracting people who need saving because you no longer confuse saving with love.
There's a moment in healing that doesn't look like much from the outside. You're alone, maybe sitting in silence. No pause, no epiphany, no fireworks. But something shifts. Someone texts you, and you don't reply. Not out of spite, but because you feel at peace without their chaos. You feel a familiar pattern rising, the urge to overgive, to explain, to fix. And you pause. You breathe. You recognize it. And this time, you choose differently. That's the moment your wound stops choosing for you. You realize you don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You don't need to chase, to shrink, to endure. You don't need to wait for someone to finally love you right, because you're already doing that for yourself. This is how emotional power is rebuilt, not all at once, but choice by choice, boundary by boundary, silence by silence. The narcissist loses power not because you became louder, but because you became grounded. And grounded people don't negotiate their peace. You don't just say, "I deserve better." You feel it in your bones, in your nervous system, in the way your energy no longer leaps toward what hurts. That's healing. Not perfection, but clarity. Not control, but sovereignty. Not avoiding pain, but choosing love that doesn't hurt.
When you heal, your relationships change. You no longer settle for surface-level affection or toxic cycles. Instead, you attract people who respect your boundaries, honor your truth, and share your values. These connections are calm, not chaotic. They support growth, not drama. They invite vulnerability, not control. You realize that the deepest intimacy comes not from intensity, but from being truly seen and accepted, flaws and all. And here's the secret. You don't need to fix these relationships. They are whole, just like you are becoming. They don't ask you to change who you are. They encourage you to show up fully. And the peace you find in these connections is unlike anything you've experienced before. It's the quiet power of being loved without conditions.
Healing isn't a destination. It's a journey, a daily choice to love yourself more than your wounds. It's the quiet courage to stand alone when you must, the strength to say no when your heart wants to say yes, the wisdom to trust yourself above all else. Remember, narcissists only have power when you give it away. The moment you reclaim your worth, you become untouchable. Not because you fight them, but because you stop inviting them in. Your healing is the key to freedom. Freedom from toxic cycles. Freedom to create real, nourishing love. Freedom to finally be yourself, fully and unapologetically. So start today. Look inward. Heal that part of you that's been waiting for permission to be whole. And know this, you are not alone. We are walking this path together. If this message resonated, subscribe to Slow Psychology for more deep insights on healing, boundaries, and the slow, powerful transformation of the soul. Your journey is just beginning.